From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good Sunday morning. After serving one term in office, Travis County District Attorney José Garza drew a Democratic primary challenger, a former prosecutor in the DA's office who shortly served under Garza, Jeremy Sylestine. While there is one Republican running in a very blue Travis County, historically, the Democrat who wins the primary wins in November. The issue for the Democratic candidates this time around is public safety and their different thoughts on how to achieve it. This morning, we're bringing you interviews with both of the candidates. Let's start with Jeremy Sylestine. For our viewers who are not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
My name is Jeremy Sylestine. I've lived here in Travis County for the second time since 2006. I was here for undergrad at UT from 1997 to 2000. I grew up in East Texas. I'm a member of the Alabama Coshada tribe of Texas over there, and first generation college graduate. I went on to law school at the University of Virginia, moved back to Texas after that and worked as a public defender in the Panhandle, and then moved back to Austin in 2006 to work for the DA's office, where I stayed for about 15 years, just over 15 years. And since December of 21, I've been running my own private practice in criminal defense.
Why are you running to be the DA?
I mean, if I had to just boil it down to a single sentence, it's because we can do better than what's being done right now. Criminal justice is a complicated thing, and it takes many shapes and forms. But in Travis County, I've seen what that looks like up close and personal for 15 plus years. I've spoken to juries over 75 times here in the county, and I know generally what their values are and how they view cases. And to see what started taking place in 2021 and thereafter, it just doesn't line up with what I know Travis County cares about. And I think that there needs to be a reset to something that is more balanced and more pragmatic and common sense, because right now it's more about political promises and policies that aren't in line with what the criminal justice system and what a prosecutor should be focused on.
So let's talk about that, because DA José Garza was elected in 2020 really on the heels of a movement to fight racial injustice and to have more police accountability. And so he ran saying, really he was going to tackle those things and put some policies in place. You were there for some of that in the beginning. Are there any policies that were put in place that you agreed with or agree with and would continue if you are elected to be DA?
Yeah, I want to put a pin in the police accountability part, sure, because I think that's so important. But in terms of other policies and things that are in place, mental health diversion, drug courts, veterans court, those are all wonderful things that we need to be celebrating and pushing more toward. What I'll say about that is that they existed before José Garza got there. And there's been a lot of credit taken for the fact that those programs are flourishing, but they existed before he did that. It's not a new idea for him. That, I think, is something that we need to continue focusing on and increasing the scope of them, because they are successful and necessary, and we know that those are some of the biggest drivers of people who find themselves back in the system over and over again. So if we can provide that on-ramp to services and resources through those programs, by all means, let's do that. That's piece number one. The police accountability part, I think, has been a failure of his office. And I look at those political cases that he brought. He promised, like you said, he promised to bring those cases rising out of the protests in May of 2020. And that was really a promise made without looking at any of the evidence. Before he got there, we were in that office looking at those cases and trying to figure out if there was any sort of criminal liability there. It was a very serious matter. Some of them were horrifying to look at, but in the end, it really comes down to what you can and can't prove. So to come in and immediately promise that and then get 21 indictments, 17 of which have now been dismissed, tells me that he's ineffective in his ability to evaluate the evidence and pursue those as a prosecutor should, which is with a mind toward what can I or can I not prove.
There was a group of Democratic elected officials who sent you a letter. They also sent it to all of us, calling on you to renounce campaign donations from donors who are Republican donors, and by that they mean people who have donated to other major Republican campaigns. And they also called on you to stop using, quote, Republican talking points and attacks in your campaign. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'll deal with the Republican talking points and attacks first, because I just don't think that's true. And I guess if telling the stories of survivors of violence and reading the data and looking at specific cases, if that's a Republican talking point, I guess I'm missing the message, because that is what is happening. That's what we're seeing in the documents that come out of the courts and the stories that we're being told by people who have experienced these things and want to come forward and tell their stories. So that's that part of it. As to the donor base, I'll say this. People in Travis County, who are the majority of my donors, are from all across the political spectrum. And you can go in and pick and choose anybody and say that they have given to this person or they've given to that person. But no one is sitting here telling me to say anything different than what my message is. And that is smart, common sense prosecution that has a balance to the system. And what we are seeing right now is a system that's out of balance. And people know very explicitly that the winner of this race in the Democratic primary will be the DA. There's a Republican challenger, but that Republican challenger doesn't stand a chance come November. So the real change happens now, and I am giving a message that people can believe in that will restore balance and integrity back to that office.
Is there something you want to say, though, to the people who are voting in the Democratic primary so that they can feel assured that you are truly a Democrat?
I've been voting Democratic my entire voting life. The very first time that I voted was in Bush v. Gore in 2000, and that was a big deal and very meaningful for me. But all of my beliefs stem from my upbringing and what I have seen over the years, and none of that's changed. I live in Austin on purpose. I live in Travis County on purpose because I believe in what Travis County citizens believe in. And if that were anything different, it would be glaringly obvious. If I have a more moderate position, I don't think that's something that needs to be punished. I am like many others in not just Travis County, but the United States who believe that we can live in the middle and we can also hold those independent thoughts in our head that we can believe in progressive principles and reform in the system while still believing in law and order.
You know, you were elected in 2020 right on the heels of a national movement where we were hearing, cries against racial injustice and cries for more police accountability. You campaigned with the promise that you were going to come in and you were going to do things differently and you were going to address those things. How have you kept that campaign promise?
Well, we absolutely have. I'm really proud of our record over the last 3 years, working to fix our broken criminal justice system and improve the safety of our community. Over the last 3 years, we have put in place new strategies to prevent gun violence before it happens. We have held our promise to stand by survivors of sexual assault, and we have increased the number of sexual assault convictions from the last administration to ours. We have held people accountable who commit acts of violence in our community, but at the same time, we've begun to reduce our reliance on incarceration and begin to address the root causes of crime in our community. And as a result of that work, this is one of the safest communities in the country.
You also said back in 2020 that you would seek accountability for the officers for some of their actions during those May 2020 social justice protests. And we saw indictments handed down on nearly 24 officers, but then charges dropped on almost all of them. What do you say to people who feel like that promise was broken?
Yeah, so at the end of last year, the district attorney's office received a brand new investigation from the Austin Police Department. And for the first time, at the end of 2023, the Austin Police Department concluded that senior members of the Austin Police Department knew prior to the protest that the weapons used during the protest were capable of and had caused serious injury. The Austin Police Department did not initiate this investigation and did not reach this conclusion until the statute of limitations had run for the leadership team and for the department itself. At the end of the day, the job of the district attorney's office is to seek just outcomes. It would be unjust to hold line officers criminally accountable when their leadership, when the agency that may have contributed to these serious injuries is shielded from criminal liability because of their own delay in investigating the facts and circumstances of what happened in the summer of 2020.
You and Mr. Sylestine have very different ideas of how you achieve public safety through criminal justice in our community. He describes his approach as being, quote, more balanced, more pragmatic, and common sense. He has said, I think bad guys do need to go to jail. What is your approach?
Well, first of all, I don't know what any of that means. My opponent has not proposed a single new idea, has not proposed any detailed plan of what he would do. As I hear my opponent talk, what we hear is more of the same tired old solutions that we have been hearing in this country for almost 200 years, which is that if we want public safety, what we have to do is lock up as many people as we can, who, by the way, happen to be predominantly working class people and people of color. And at the district attorney's office, we have also taken approaches that support the stability of this community. I want to give you one example. We had a young man enter our criminal justice system, and he was charged with possession of cocaine. He was a single father who had never had a meaningful opportunity for a career in his life. He was hustling to support his family. And when he came to our office, we gave him the choice to enter into a program sponsored by the Carpenters. He took that opportunity, and the Carpenters told us he was their best student. And so instead of leaving our criminal justice system as a convicted felon, he left our criminal justice system as a carpenter's apprentice with his first opportunity to have a meaningful career. And again, that's not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do for our long-term public safety. So, of course, we hold people accountable who commit acts of violence. As I just said, we've tried more homicide cases and won more of them than the last administration. We are holding people accountable who commit acts of violence. We've increased the number of sexual assault convictions from the last administration to ours. But we know that the challenges that face our community, that threaten our public safety, are not challenges that we can arrest and prosecute our way out of. If we are serious about our long-term public safety, we have to pursue strategies that strengthen the stability of our community. And that's what we do.
Early voting is happening now and runs until Friday, March 1st. Election Day is March 5th. That's Texas This Week.